From a movie that made me cry my eyes out at the Cannes Film Festival this year to a biopic that is out of this world. Welcome to our weekly film show. I'm joined in the studio by film critic Emma Jones. Hello, Emma.
Hello, hi.
Damien Chazelle of Whiplash and La La Land fame has a new movie out, telling the story of Neil Armstrong's voyage to the moon. Now, Chazelle's first two movies won Oscars, including Best Director for La La Land. Yep. Is First Man any good?
Oh, I have to say, I think this could be his weakest film out of that trio, but that doesn't mean it's not going to do really well in award season. I think we've seen from films like Alfonso Cuarón's Gravity most recently that space can play really, really well with audiences. And I think we also know from Gravity that space can be the loneliest place, and First Man is really no different. I wouldn't say it's one of those conventional triumphant biopics of a famous icon. Instead, it's really an exploration of grief, and I'd say the film is also full of voids and silences, not just in space, but in the Armstrong family home. So Ryan Gosling of La La Land has been chosen to play Neil Armstrong, and the thesis that Chazelle puts forward is that what drives Armstrong literally to space is the death of his infant daughter. But that's not the only loss that Armstrong suffers in his life. He also loses so many of his friends and colleagues who are fellow astronauts in the rush of America to try and get the first person on the moon. And at the same time, all these enforced separations from his wife, who's played by The Crown's Claire Foy, are blowing their marriage apart.
OK, well, we actually interviewed Ryan Gosling on the red carpet in Paris when he was here for the premiere of First Man. He talks about the pressure of playing such an American icon.
Damn, that is a big mother.
It'll go up like a half-kiloton A-bomb if it blows.
The vehicle's not safe.
We need to fail down here so we don't fail up there.
This isn't just another trip, Neil. You're not just going to work.
Do you think you're coming back?
There are risks, but we have every intention of coming back.
Somebody got a Swiss Army knife?
A Swiss Army knife? Are you kidding me?
There was a lot of pressure. Neil was a very exceptional person in many ways, but I think the biggest challenge was knowing that his sons would see the film and just feeling like, that we would, honor their parents and it's the biggest reward is that they have seen the film and they have been fully supportive of it. So I can't imagine a better outcome.
In interviews and in the film, I find Ryan Gosling very deadpan.
Yes, he's not really the most facially expressive of actors, shall we say. He might have been the right man to play Armstrong. I'm slightly dubious about it because I think in this film he shows all the animation of a stuffed toy, frankly. And so I think that we have to really guess to see if there's an internal struggle going on. And as an afterthought as well, Claire Foy in the role of Mrs. Armstrong, she has a couple of great scenes after that. I think she's wasted.
OK, and there's been quite a lot of comments on the fact that Chazelle fails to recreate exactly the way the flag was planted on the moon, the US flag.
Yes, indeed. A lot has been made of this, and there's plenty of American flags in the film, don't fret. But I think Chazelle was keen to portray a really broad portrait of America as a whole in the 60s. So you see Vietnam protests, that kind of thing. So there is a moment of cultural triumph for America. I think that one small step for mankind, the audience knows by the end of the film what that has cost Armstrong. I think that's really in keeping with the tone of the film, what he did.
OK, well, now to a film that divided critics at the Cannes Film Festival. Nadine Labaki's Capernaum left many people weeping, including me, but others called it poverty porn. Yeah. What did you think?
Well, I had a bit of a cry as well myself, may I say, and I was actually personally delighted when Capernaum won the Prix du Jury at Cannes this year. Now, there's a big international release planned for the film. I think there's a real push to try and get it on the shortlist for best foreign language film, and of course Lebanon did really well last year with The Insult as well. Nadine Labaki, she's always mixed mixed politics, hasn't she, with her films in terms of Caramel and Where Do We Go Now? But this is a full-on social issue film. There's no doubt about this. The central character is a young boy called Zayn. He's played brilliantly by a young actor called Zayn Al-Raifa, and he lives in abject poverty with his parents. And when we first meet Zayn, he's actually in prison, and he's suing his parents for being feckless enough to let him be born. So let's have a look at the film.
طعنت واحد بالسكين.
ايه وابن كلب.
كمان مصر عليا؟ هي بدون ضحك بالقاعة. شو هالقصة؟ شو هالدوشة اللي عاملها؟ إعلام وصحافة وبعدت وراهم على السجن. عارف ليش أنت هون؟
ايه نعم.
ليه؟
بدي اشتكي على اهلي.
ليه بدك تشكي على أهلك؟
هم خلفوني.
Zayn's life does seem completely unbearable. His older sister is effectively sold in marriage with tragic consequences. After this, Zayn runs away. He meets an illegal immigrant called Raheel who has a baby herself. And when Raheel is picked up by the authorities, Zayn is effectively looking after this baby. All the performances are fantastic. Zayn, as I mentioned, is amazing. But the baby too, didn't you find that?
The baby is amazing. And these kids are real street kids, aren't they, these actors?
Absolutely, real street children. I read somewhere online that the baby should get the best baby performance ever.
How did they get him to do it?
I don't know. I don't know.
Well, at the Cannes Film Festival this year, we spoke to the director, Nadine Labaki. She said this was a film that she absolutely had to write.
It was not a choice, it was a need. It was beginning to become a sort of an obsession in my life. And I felt the need to express myself towards this issue. These are children that we see every day, and I wanted to understand when this kid disappears from my sight and he, goes around the corner, what happens to him? Where does he go? Who is he? Who is his family?
So what do you think mainstream audiences are going to think of this?
If I have a criticism of the film, even as I was crying, I knew it was too sugary. I'd say the last 15 minutes, it's really a determined pull on the heartstrings by Labaki. And there's way too much swelling music for my liking. It's going to be really interesting to see what audiences make of it as opposed to the Cannes crowd.
And this year marks the centenary of the birth of Nelson Mandela. He sees centre stage during a trial in the 60s that he may be most famous for putting him in prison for 27 years. But it wasn't just him on trial. A documentary called The State Against Mandela and the Others shed some light on this historic case. Emma, who are the others then?
Yeah, it's a great play on words because the others actually become the heroes of the film. If you know anything about the trial in the 60s, you know the name of Nelson Mandela, and it's about time, I suppose, you got to know these others. So the documentary is by two directors called Nicolas Champeau and Gilles Porte, and they found that this trial in the early 60s had been recorded audio only, but could be digitised by the early 21st century. So that gave them the idea for the documentary. They then found out there were still people still alive who were defendants in the trial, plus their defence lawyers. They were all at least in their late 80s. So the directors really had to, time was of the essence. And this could have been a normal talking head documentary, but for the fact that the trial was audio only. So they got the services of a Parisian artist called Erd in order to bring it to life. So let's take a look.
I told the group that the state is going to ask for a death sentence.
I asked my mother, how do you prepare for somebody getting the death sentence? And she said, you don't. You just have to carry on and hope that it doesn't happen.
Which do you prefer, Sophiatown or Meadowlands?
I prefer to live where I would like to live, not where somebody in Parliament tells me to live. Right.
And that was from The State Against Mandela and the Others. Now, finally, we're going to talk about the Lumiere Film Festival that's taking place in Lyon.
Yes, indeed. It's now in its 10th year and it's really grown into an incredibly popular festival with a wonderful mix, I think, of classic screenings by the honorees, plus awards and masterclasses. The president is one Thierry Frémaux of Cannes fame. And if you followed, of course, the Netflix versus Cannes fracas this year, you'll be interested to know that there is a Netflix documentary, The Other Side of the Wind. It's about Orson Welles. In fact, it's playing at the festival. Claude Lelouch was the guest of honour at the opening ceremony, and he was accompanied by people like Liv Ullmann and Javier Bardem, who's also being honoured. Monica Bellucci was also present, and Alfonso Cuarón with another Netflix film. He was there too. And Thierry Frémaux had a lot to say about the way the festival has grown over the last decade.
We thought we were all going to have fun together, and then it got a little big. I'm not going to say that we were sure, but we're happy that the spirit of this festival hasn't gotten lost, and the fact that more and more people are coming to enjoy the films.
Well, we've still got the big award to go, the Prix Lumiere, and last year it went to Wong Kar-wai, and this year it's going to the incomparable Jane Fonda.
Okay, well, Emma, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to leave you with some Jane Fonda highlights. Remember our website, we're also on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. There's more news coming up on France 24 after this.